All right, so this is gonna sound crazy, but I swear on everything, this is real. It's been 3 months, and I still don't sleep right. Every time I close my eyes, I feel like I'm back there, in that nightmare. I'm telling this now because, well, honestly, I don't think I have much time left. My family is still missing, and every lead I've chased turns into a dead end. But let me start from the beginning. I'm a cop, and I've been on the force for about 8 years. Nothing special, just a regular guy trying to keep my community safe. I'm married, got 2 kids, and we live in this quiet little suburban area outside Chicago. Pretty normal, right? Well, it was, until about 4 months ago when I got involved in a case that changed everything. It all started with this anonymous tip that came into the precinct. Some random dude claimed he stumbled across a live stream on the dark web. If you don't know much about the dark web, let me just say this. It's not a place you accidentally end up. You've got to know what you're doing to even access it. Anyway, this guy said the stream showed someone killing people, torturing them. He said it was like a game, and viewers were paying to vote on what happened to the victims. At first, everyone in the station thought it was a prank. People call him weird stuff all the time. But then, a week later, a woman went missing from a Starbucks just 2 towns over. Her boyfriend swore she was there 1 minute, and the next, she was gone. No security footage, no witnesses, nothing. That's when things got weird. The anonymous tipster called back, saying he recognized the woman from the stream. He gave us the site's name, but when our tech guys tried to access it, it was gone, completely wiped. It was like it never existed. That should have been the end of it, but for some reason, I couldn't let it go. I started digging, probably too much. I began looking into other disappearances around the area, and sure enough, there was a pattern. People vanishing in public places. A guy gone from a McDonald's in Indiana. A teenager missing from a Target parking lot in Milwaukee. They all had one thing in common. No footage, no clues, no bodies. It was like they'd just disappeared. By this point, I was fully obsessed. I'd spend nights at my desk combing through case files, piecing together every tiny connection. My wife, Sarah, started getting frustrated. "You're working yourself into the ground," she said. "It's not even your case." But I couldn't stop. Something about it just felt off, you know? Then one night, I found it. I was scrolling through this old forum, one of those conspiracy theory boards where people talk about aliens and Bigfoot, when I saw a post about a group called the Watchers. According to the post, the Watchers were some underground network of psychos who kidnapped people for sport. The craziest part? They supposedly used the dark web to stream their games. It sounded insane, but I couldn't ignore it. The details matched everything I'd found. I took it to my captain the next morning, but he just laughed and told me to leave the internet detective work to the nerds. So I decided to keep digging on my own. Big mistake. One night, after Sarah and the kids were asleep, I went on Reddit and started asking around on some of the sketchier forums. I knew it was risky, but I didn't care. I had to know if the Watchers were real. A few people responded with vague, cryptic comments like, "Don't go looking for them unless you want to be found," and "they're always watching." I thought it was just internet trolls messing with me. But then, around 2 a.m., I got a private message. It was from a user named Control-Alt-Delete. Yeah, real original. And all it said was, "Do you want to see for yourself?" Now, I don't know what possessed me to respond, but I did. I replied, "Yes," and almost immediately, they sent me a link. It wasn't a regular URL. It was one of those .onion addresses that you need a special browser to access. I hesitated for a second, but my curiosity got the better of me. I downloaded the browser and opened the link. The site was called The Playground. The homepage was simple, a black screen with a single line of text that said, "Welcome to the game. Are you ready to play?" Below it was a Join Now button. My heart was pounding as I clicked it, and the screen changed to a live stream. At first it was just static, but then the camera focused on this guy sitting in a chair. He was tied up, blindfolded, and shaking like a leaf. There was a timer on the bottom of the screen, counting down from 5 minutes. Underneath it, there was a live chat where people were placing bets and making suggestions. Stuff like, cut off his fingers, or burn him. I felt sick. Before I could even process what I was seeing, the timer hit 0 and someone walked into the frame wearing a mask. They didn't say a word. They just stood there holding a knife while the chat went wild. I slammed my laptop shut and sat there in the dark, shaking. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have done that." I froze. How did they get my number? I hadn't signed up or entered any personal info. I started panicking, but before I could respond, another text came through. "Now we're watching you." I didn't sleep that night. After I got those texts, I was a wreck. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I just sat in the living room staring at my phone, waiting for another message, but nothing else came. By the time the sun came up, I had convinced myself it was just some tech-savvy troll messing with me. I mean, how could they possibly know who I was or where I lived? But then things started happening. The next day, I went into work, trying to act normal. I didn't mention anything about the playground to anyone, not even my partner, Mike. I figured the less people knew about it, the better. But as soon as I sat down at my desk, I noticed something weird. There was an envelope sitting there, no name, no return address, just a plain, white envelope. I opened it, and inside was a single photograph. It was my family, Sarah and the kids. They were at the park down the street from our house, the one we go to almost every weekend. The photo wasn't old either. It had to have been taken recently because they were wearing the same clothes they'd had on the day before. I felt like I was going to throw up. I looked around the precinct, trying to see if anyone was watching me, but everyone seemed busy with their own work. I tucked the photo into my pocket and tried to focus on my assignments, but I couldn't concentrate. All I could think about was how someone had gotten close enough to take that picture without any of us noticing. When I got home that evening, I didn't tell Sarah about the photo. I didn't want to freak her out, especially since I wasn't even sure what was going on yet. Instead, I doubled down on security. I checked all the locks on the doors and windows, installed a couple of those cheap security cameras from Amazon, and made sure the alarm system was working. But that didn't stop them. The next night, I was working late in my home office when I heard a noise outside. It was faint, like someone walking through the yard. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check it out, but by the time I got there, whoever it was had already gone. What they left behind, though, was worse. There was a note taped to the front door. It just said, "Stay out of the dark." At first, I thought it was just another sick joke. But then I noticed something at the bottom of the note, a little red smear. I don't know if it was blood or something else, but I didn't stick around to find out. I called Mike and told him everything. "Man, you need to report this," he said. "This is way beyond a prank." But how was I supposed to explain it? "Hi, Captain. So, I broke into the dark web and found a murder live stream, and now someone's stalking my family?" "Yeah, no thanks. I decided to handle it on my own." That weekend, Sarah wanted to take the kids to McDonald's for lunch. She said it'd be good to get out of the house, and honestly, I needed the distraction. We drove to the one near the mall, and for a little while, everything felt normal again. The kids were laughing, Sarah was smiling, and for a second, I thought maybe I was overreacting. But then I noticed the guy. He was sitting at a table near the back, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. At first, I didn't think much of it. Lots of people dress like that. But then I realized he wasn't eating. He wasn't even looking at the menu. He was just watching us. I told Sarah to take the kids and wait in the car. "Why? What's going on?" she asked, but I didn't have time to explain. As soon as they left, I walked up to the guy and asked if I could help him with something. He didn't say a word. He just stood up, looked me dead in the eyes, and walked out the door. That's when I noticed the phone sitting on the table where he'd been. It was recording. I grabbed it and tried to follow him, but by the time I got outside, he was gone. I looked through the footage on the phone, and my stomach dropped. There were videos of me, Sarah, the kids, all of us, going about our daily lives. Us at the grocery store, us playing in the backyard, us sleeping. How long had they been watching us?
That night, I finally broke down and told Sarah everything. I showed her the photo, the note, the footage on the phone. She was furious. At me, at whoever these people were, at the whole situation. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "We need to go to the police." I tried to explain that I was the police, but even I knew how ridiculous that sounded.
The only thing I could think to do was move us somewhere safe, at least until I figured out who was behind all this. I called Mike and asked if he could pull some strings to get us into protective custody, but before I could even finish the conversation, my phone buzzed again. It was another text from the same unknown number. "We warned you, now it's too late." The lights in the house went out, so the lights went out. The whole house plunged into darkness. I was on the phone with Mike when it happened, and I'll admit, I panicked. I fumbled around for a flashlight, but all I could hear was Sarah screaming from upstairs. My blood ran cold as I realized the kids were up there too. "Mike, I'll call you back," I said, barely getting the words out before sprinting up the stairs. When I got to the bedroom, Sarah was standing by the window, clutching her phone, tears streaming down her face. "They're gone," she said, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, pushing past her to check the kids' room. Empty. The bed sheets were pulled back, and the window was wide open, the curtains billowing in the cold night air. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I ran outside, shouting their names, searching the yard, the street, even the neighbor's property, but there was no sign of them. Sarah was hysterical, begging me to call someone, anyone, but what was I supposed to say? "Hi, my kids were just kidnapped, and I think it's because I poked around on the dark web." I called 911 anyway. By the time the patrol cars showed up, I was pacing the driveway, trying to piece together what had just happened. I told them everything, or at least the parts that wouldn't make me sound insane. They promised to start an Amber Alert and get search teams on it immediately, but I could tell from the looks on their faces that they thought it was a domestic issue. Maybe they thought Sarah and I were fighting, or that the kids had run away. But I knew better. After the cops left, I sat in the living room with Sarah, staring at my laptop. I didn't want to open the playground again, but I felt like I didn't have a choice. If these people were behind my kids' disappearance, maybe there'd be some kind of clue on the site. It took me about an hour to find the link again. This time, it wasn't on a forum. It was in my email. The subject line read, "It's time to play." When I clicked the link, the screen lit up with the same message as before. "Welcome to the game. Are you ready to play?" But instead of the usual Join Now button, there was a new one that said, "You have no choice." I hesitated for a second before clicking it. The stream popped up and my heart sank. The camera was pointed at a small, dimly lit room. In the middle of it were my kids. They were tied to chairs, blindfolded and shaking. There was a timer at the bottom of the screen, counting down from 24 hours. Underneath the timer was a message: "Do exactly as we say, or they die." The chat was already filling up with comments. "Let's see how far Daddy will go." "Bet he won't even make it past the first task." "Tick-tock, tick-tock." I wanted to smash my laptop. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, but instead, I did the only thing I could. I followed their instructions. The first task was simple enough. They wanted me to take the phone I'd taken from the guy at McDonald's and drop it in a specific dumpster behind an old abandoned Kmart. I didn't even question it. I grabbed the phone, got in the car, and drove there as fast as I could. The whole time, I was looking over my shoulder, convinced I was being followed. When I got to the dumpster, I tossed the phone in and waited for further instructions. It didn't take long. My laptop pinged with a notification as soon as I got home. "Good job," the message read. But that was just the beginning. The second task was worse. They sent me a photo of a guy, a middle-aged man in a business suit, sitting in a Starbucks somewhere downtown. The caption read, "Follow him. Do not let him see you." I didn't even know who this guy was, but I didn't care. All I cared about was getting my kids back. I drove downtown and parked a block away from the Starbucks, watching from a distance as the man left the building and started walking down the street. I followed him for almost an hour. He went to a bank, then a convenience store, then finally a parking garage. I thought maybe I'd lost him, but then I noticed the chat on my laptop was still active. "Don't lose him now. He's in the green sedan, 4th floor." I don't know how they knew, but they were right. The guy got into a green sedan and pulled out of the garage. I followed him for a few miles until he stopped at a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. "Go inside," the next message said. I parked a few houses down and tried to calm myself. This was insane. What was I even doing? Breaking into someone's house for... what? To save my kids? What if this was all just some sick prank? But then I remembered the timer on the live stream, and all doubt disappeared. I walked up to the house, keeping low to avoid being seen, and tried the door. Locked. I went around to the back and found a window that was cracked open just enough for me to squeeze through. Once I was inside, I realized how quiet the house was. No TV, no music, no voices, just silence. I crept through the kitchen and into the living room, my heart pounding with every step. That's when I saw him. The guy from the Starbucks was sitting in an armchair, staring straight ahead. At first, I thought he hadn't noticed me, but then I realized he wasn't moving. He wasn't even blinking. I got closer and almost screamed. His throat had been slit, and his eyes were wide open, frozen in fear. Before I could process what was happening, my laptop pinged again. "Good work," the message said. "Now leave before someone finds you." I should have walked away. I should have called for backup, told the truth, confessed to everything, or at least driven straight to the FBI, but I didn't. I couldn't. My kids' faces, their terrified little faces on that live stream, were burned into my brain. All I could think about was getting them back, no matter what it cost me. But by the time I left that house, something in me had shifted. The air felt heavier, the world seemed darker, more dangerous. I felt like a criminal, like I'd crossed some line I couldn't uncross. And that's when the nightmares began. That night, after I got home, I locked every door and window in the house, checked the cameras, and kept my laptop open on the coffee table. The live stream was still up. My kids hadn't moved. The timer had dropped to 18 hours. Sarah wouldn't even look at me. She sat in the corner of the living room, hugging her knees to her chest, silently sobbing. I wanted to comfort her, to promise her that everything would be okay, but how could I? Nothing about this was okay. Around midnight, my laptop buzzed again. Another message. "Are you ready for the next task?" I didn't respond. What was the point? They were controlling everything now. This time, they didn't send me a location. Instead, they sent me an IP address. I copied it into my browser, and it brought me to a page that looked like a stripped-down version of Google Maps. There was a single red pin marking a spot in the middle of the woods, about 30 miles outside of town. "Go there," the message said. "Bring a shovel." I didn't want to tell Sarah where I was going, so I just lied and said I needed to follow up on a lead. She didn't argue. She didn't even look up from her spot on the couch. I grabbed a flashlight, a shovel from the garage, and my gun. I wasn't about to walk into the middle of nowhere unarmed. As I drove, the city lights disappeared, and the road got darker and narrower. My GPS kept telling me to turn down dirt paths that didn't even look like roads anymore. Finally, I reached the spot. It was a clearing surrounded by trees, so thick they looked like a wall. The only sound was the wind rustling through the branches. My phone buzzed with another message. "Dig." I turned on my flashlight and aimed it at the ground. There was already a patch of dirt that looked freshly disturbed. My hands were shaking as I plunged the shovel into the ground and started digging. It didn't take long to hit something. I cleared away the dirt and realized it was a wooden box, about the size of a suitcase. My stomach twisted as I lifted it out of the hole. The top was nailed shut, but there was a crowbar lying nearby, like someone had left it there for me. I pried the box open, and what I saw inside will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a photo album. At first, I didn't get it. It just looked like a regular cheap photo album, the kind you'd buy at Target. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. The first photo was of me. Not just any photo, it was me at the precinct, sitting at my desk looking at case files. The next photo was of Sarah, taken from the kitchen window as she cooked dinner. The one after that was of my son, walking home from school. Then my daughter, asleep in her bed. But it didn't stop there. The further I went, the more disturbing the photos became. There were pictures of me sleeping, pictures of Sarah, and the kids in the living room, pictures of us in public places like the park and the grocery store. But the worst ones were taken inside the house, inside our bedroom. Someone had been inside my home, watching us, taking these photos while we had no idea. At the end of the album, there was a single note tucked into the last page. It said, "You're part of the game now." I dropped the album and stepped back, my mind racing. I'd been so focused on saving my kids that I hadn't stopped to think about who I was dealing with. Whoever these people were, they weren't just some random dark web psychos. This was something bigger, more organized, and far more dangerous than I'd imagined. As I stood there, trying to process everything, my phone buzzed again. "Look up." My heart stopped. I slowly raised my flashlight and aimed it at the trees. Hanging from one of the branches was a security camera. It was pointing directly at me, the red light blinking steadily. They'd been watching me the whole time. I sprinted back to my car, the album still in my hands, and tore down the dirt path as fast as I could. I didn't care about the timer, the tasks, or the live stream anymore. I just wanted to get my family and get out of this nightmare. When I got home, the house was dark and silent. Too silent. "Sarah!" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty hallway. No answer. I checked every room, but they were gone. Sarah, the kids, even the cameras I'd installed. Everything was gone. It was like they'd never been there in the first place. That's when I noticed the laptop. The live stream was still up, but the camera angle had changed. Now it was pointed at my living room, and in the center of the frame was me, standing there, staring at the screen. The chat exploded. "Welcome home, officer. This is getting good. Don't blink." When I saw myself on the live stream, standing there in my own living room, my brain short-circuited. My first instinct was to grab the laptop and smash it, but then I realized that wouldn't stop them. Whoever they were in control, and they wanted me to see this. Before I could move, another message popped up on the screen. "Check the basement." My stomach dropped. The basement. I hadn't even thought to look there. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the flashlight and headed for the stairs. The door to the basement was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, a cold draft hit me. The air down there smelled wrong, like damp concrete and something metallic. The staircase creaked under my weight as I descended into the darkness. My flashlight barely cut through the pitch black, and every step felt heavier than the last. At the bottom, I froze. There was something in the middle of the room, illuminated by a single, dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. It was a table. And on that table was a phone. My phone. I approached it slowly, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The phone lit up as I got closer, displaying a video on the screen. My hands trembled as I picked it up and hit play. The video showed Sarah and the kids sitting in what looked like a small concrete room. They were tied up, gagged and blindfolded, but they were alive. I felt a flicker of hope until the camera panned to someone else. It was me, or at least it looked like me. Same face, same uniform, same everything. This other me was sitting in the same room as my family, holding a knife. He leaned into the camera and smiled. "They're waiting for you," he said. The video ended and my phone buzzed with a new text message. It was from an unknown number, of course. "Time's almost up, officer. If you want to see them again, you know what to do." I didn't know what to do. None of this made sense anymore. There was a guy who looked exactly like me, my family was God knows where, and the people behind all of this were still watching, still pulling the strings. The timer on the live stream had dropped to 2 hours, and I felt like I was running out of time and options. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. At the far end of the basement, there was a door. It was metal, rusted, and looked completely out of place, like it didn't belong in my house at all. My flashlight beam wavered as I walked toward it, every step filling me with more dread. When I reached the door, I saw a note taped to it. 3 words scrawled in what looked like blood. No turning back. I hesitated for what felt like an eternity before opening the door. It wasn't locked. It swung open easily, revealing a dark hallway that stretched farther than it should have. My basement isn't big. There's no way this hallway should have fit, but at this point, I wasn't even questioning reality anymore. The walls were concrete, cold and damp, and the only light came from faint, flickering bulbs spaced unevenly along the ceiling. The sound of my footsteps echoed unnaturally, like the hallway was amplifying every noise. And then I heard something else. Footsteps. Someone was following me. I spun around, shining my flashlight back down the hallway, but there was nothing there, just the empty path I'd come from. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw a shadow move. I started walking faster, my heart pounding in my chest, but no matter how far I went, the hallway just kept going. Finally, I reached another door. This one was newer, cleaner, and painted bright red. There was no handle, just a keypad with a single blinking green light. My phone buzzed again. "Enter the code 3154. I typed it in and the door slid open with a mechanical hiss. On the other side was a room I'll never forget. It was circular, with walls covered in monitors, dozens, maybe hundreds of them. Each one showed a different scene, people in their homes, walking down streets, sitting in restaurants, playing with their kids. Some of the feeds were live, others looked pre-recorded. In the center of the room was a single chair, and sitting in that chair was me. Not the guy from the video, but me. Same uniform, same face, same everything. He turned to look at me as I stepped inside, and for a moment we just stared at each other. "Welcome to the end," he said, his voice calm, almost friendly. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. "This," he said, gesturing to the monitors, "is the game. And you've been playing it for a long time, officer." I didn't understand. I didn't want to understand. I just wanted my family back. "Where are they?" I shouted. "Where's my wife? My kids?" "They're safe," he said. "For now." He stood up and walked toward me, his movements eerily calm, like he wasn't afraid of me at all. "You've done well so far," he continued. "Most people don't make it this far, but now it's time for the final choice." "What choice?" I asked, my voice shaking. He smiled and stepped aside, revealing another monitor. This one showed Sarah and the kids still tied up in that concrete room. Next to them was a timer, less than 15 minutes left. "Here's how this works," he said. You can save them, but it'll cost you. Your freedom, your life, your identity. You'll become one of us, or you can walk away right now and we'll let you live. Your family, however. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I stood there, frozen, as the timer ticked down. I wanted to believe he was bluffing, that this was all some elaborate hoax, but deep down I knew it wasn't. These people, whoever they were, had planned this too perfectly. They'd been watching me for months, maybe years, waiting for the right moment to pull me into their twisted game. I looked at the monitor, at Sarah and the kids, and made my choice. The next thing I remember is waking up in my car parked in front of my house. My head was pounding, and I couldn't remember how I got there. The house was empty. Sarah and the kids were gone, and there was no sign they'd ever been there. The basement door was sealed shut, like it had never existed. I tried calling Mike, but his number was disconnected. I went to the precinct, but no one recognized me. It was like I'd been erased from existence. And then I realized I was on one of the monitors. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been getting texts every day telling me where to go, what to do. I don't know who I am anymore, or if I'll ever see my family again. All I know is that I'm part of the game now, and they're always watching.